Hey fly tyers, welcome back. I'm Matt, thanks for stopping by. And if you like fly tying videos with a little bit of history, then subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss anything. Now I've got a really simple pattern for you tonight. This one is the X-Caddis. Now it's not a real old pattern. It was created in 1980 by two gentlemen, Craig Matthews, owner of Blue Ribbon Flies in West Yellowstone, Montana, and John Juracek, originally a fisheries biologist with the Wyoming Game and Fish. He later moved out to Montana and partnered with Craig in this shop. So they came up with this fly, the X-Caddis. Now, how is this fly different from a regular Elk Hair Caddis? Well, for starters, it doesn't have a palmered hackle up through the body. The wing might be just a little bit smaller, but primarily it's got a synthetic shuck, a trailing shuck, which is meant to ride down in the surface film and imitate the caddis that are having a little problem breaking out of their pupal stage and shedding their shuck before they become adults, and that might be what the fish are keying on. Now let's consider this scenario real quick. If you're out at your favorite trout water, maybe a tailwater or a freestone, you've been having a little bit of luck, you've seen the caddis flying around most of the day, maybe you've caught a few fish on your Elk Hair Caddis, but all of a sudden it's gone cold. You still see some fish rising, you might see some dimpled rises or some porpoise rolls with the tail coming up, and you're not seeing a lot of bugs on the water. And maybe your Elk Hair Caddis is still getting some rejections or even some splashy rises that you think are takes, but you just can't set the hook. You think, oh my gosh, I just suck as a fly fisherman. But wait, it might not be that. It might be that they're rejecting your fly at the last second. So they might very well be keying on these caddis that are up there in the surface film that we as fishermen can't see on the surface, but you can bet the fish sure see them. So if you've ever found yourself in that situation, I hope you have some of these X-Caddis in your box. If not, tie some up. I think you'll like the pattern. It's not hard at all to tie. So let's give it a shot. So there it is. You can tell it's a little bit simpler than the standard Elk Hair Caddis. So common size for this X-Caddis, as big as a 12 and as small as an 18. I'm using a 14 standard length barbless dry fly hook. And I'm going to put down a base of olive thread, 70 denier. I'll put it all the way back to the bend. Now the tail on this, it's not a tail, it's actually a shuck, is Z-lon. Z-lon or synthetic Antron. If you've got this stuff, you see this one strand of this is really 4 smaller strands. So I'll split that up. And this is one of the 4 strands right here. And even this is probably more than I want. So what I'll do, I will cut this to about an inch, a little bit longer than I want, and then split it in half. Till I've got about that much right there. So how long do we want it to be? I would say a little bit more than a hook gap, but we're also going to wrap it around the back of the hook so it's pointing down just a little bit. So let's get this tied in. You know what? Before we do that, I'm going to snip off just snip off a little piece of it to get the ends the same length. So, okay, there we go. That's what I'm going to do right there. I'm going to tie it maybe just a little bit longer than a hook gap because then I can wrap my thread around. So you see that's a little longer, but I'm going to take some wraps around the bend of the hook to get this thing pointing down because this is the part you definitely want trailing in the water. Now you could go ahead and snip this off or just bury it in on the way up. Okay, got a few scragglies right there. I'll just throw a few extra wraps down, but take your thread back to the rear of the body or the front of that shuck. Maybe leave it backed off just a little bit. And then what? Put some wax on, like Mr. Miyagi would tell Daniel in the old Karate Kid movies. Wax on, not wax off, just the first part of that. Now, some olive dubbing. You could use synthetic here if you want. I just pulled out a little patch of olive rabbit. That much right there is about 4 times how much I need. So I'm just going to pluck a little bit and touch it on here and then spin it. fairly tight noodle. You don't necessarily want this too buggy. It's okay if it is, but it's not necessarily one of the features of the fly. Okay, so I've got a little bit of bare thread right there. That will get me with 2 wraps to the back, and now that 3rd wrap is putting some dubbing down. So build a taper if you want. I don't think it's all that important. I mean, maybe if you're making an Instagram fly, but if you're just making your fishing flies, a taper right there is not all that important. So I think that body right there looks fine. Now we've only got one component left. Yearling elk hair, if you got it, and if you're like most people, you don't, take your deer hair. I'll take a clump about that big right there, put that in my stacker, give it a few good whacks. And now let's open it up, see if it's stacked very well. I think that's stacked pretty close. Might have some small ones to pull out, so I'll grab it a little bit right there and then just pull that if there are any shorter ones and get them out. Okay, for the length of this, not as long as the tail, just about as long as the body, maybe just past the bend of the hook. So make sure your thread's hanging where you want this to be caught in, and hold it tight with your material hand. Now I'll put a loose pinch wrap right there, still holding it tight with my material hand while I pull it up on my side right here. And then maybe another one, another tight wrap. Okay, that's the right length. I've just got to be careful. I'm starting to spin around the shank of the hook. So I'm going to hold it tight again while I put another wrap right here and just arrange this so that it really won't spin too much on me. Okay, now I've got about 4 or 5 pretty good tight wraps right there, and I think that's going to be fine. Now we're going to cut this. What I like to do when cutting this, I'll pull it up and then give it a little twist, kind of bunches it together. And I'm not going to cut it from here. I'm going to cut it perpendicular, and I think that gives you the nice flatter head, kind of like a old marine guy with a flat top. So there's your flat top right there. We got a little bit more to do. I will always lift it up. I'll do this with the elk hair caddises too. Lift it up, throw a few wraps up under there, and then I'm going to work 1 or 2 through it just to really lock it in. Now you might misplace a few of these fibers, but don't worry about that. You can trim it if you want, or as long as you can get your tippet up through there, then you've got a good fly. Now sometimes I will put a whip finish up under there, but a lot of times I don't. I take the easy route, and when that one is starting to spin on me, so I need a couple more tight wraps before I whip finish. So these are very tight wraps right there. Now I got it pretty, see that? Not perfect. That wing is starting to spin on me. If I can rearrange it back up, we'll be in good shape. Yeah, that's gonna work. Look at it from the fish's point of view, and that's a pretty good profile. So let's go ahead and put our whip finish on this. 4 or 5 turns just right there on top where we had those last wraps. Don't worry about getting it up under the head. And I'll show you where we're going to put the head cement in just a second. So I won't try to even put it up top right there. You'll just make a big mess of it. So I'll just turn it over and put a drop of the head cement right there on those thread wraps on the bottom. I don't even worry about spinning it around. I just put a drop right there, let it dry, and put it in my box. Now one thing you might want to do on this, just take a look at it. Is that shuck going to be too long? You can always trim it if you need. That one might be, no, I think that's going to be about right. So I think we're fine with that. So there you go, folks. An X-Caddis, great pattern when you're getting refused on your regular Elk Hair Caddises. So thanks for watching. I do really appreciate it. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you next time.